Okay. So part two, picking up on about slide 22. One other issue here is the issue of what's called void for vagueness, which is related to an issue also called substantive due process. Overbroad means that when the government does there's a concept called time, place, and manner restrictions. So the government can reasonably limit the time in which speech is made. In other words, it has to be content neutral. So, for example, curfews, they can keep you from having a loud party at your house at 10 o'clock at night or whatever. That's not related to the music you're playing. It's not related to whether you're listening to conservative talk TV or a liberal podcast or whatever too loud. It's strictly noise. You could be praying, singing, playing music, watching TV or whatever. If it's too late, the cops could be called to tell you to turn it down. So it's not content related. Time, place be the place. So you can't just come on my private property and just yell at the top of your lungs. If you come to my door and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about the Jehovah's Witnesses, I can say, no, please leave, and you have to leave, otherwise you're trespassing. As a private citizen, of course, I don't have to agree with your message. I can kick you off if I don't want to agree with your message. If I want to invite you in, I can invite you in. But the government, again, is like it's trespassing. So you can say what you want to say, just go over there in a public place and say it, and not on private property. You can get kicked out of stores, movies. You have free speech, but you can't talk during a movie. We have paid to watch a movie, not to hear you talk. And then manner gets into things like what we'll talk here, like fighting words and things like that. You can say things that are vulgar, ugly, hateful, evil even. And if you're 50 feet away or 150 yards away from the person about which you're talking, the government will allow that, meaning the cops are not going to step in and say, hey, buddy, keep quiet. But if you're, nose to nose with somebody and someone's calling somebody a racial slur or ugly names or whatever, pick your thing that would sort of set you off, the cops could come in and they won't even usually say, don't say that. They'll just say, break it up, or you go back over there behind your barricade, or you go across the street, or you got, it's there to stop a fight, right? Those are called fighting words. So you have no right to start a fight, right? Or to cause a breach of the peace or incite an act of violence or those kinds of things. The other one here, this overbroad issue, the case there, Coates versus Cincinnati, is Cincinnati City Council passed a law, or an ordinance rather, that made it against the law to be, quote, to act in a manner annoying to persons in public. Oh boy, what could that be, right? So manner annoying to persons. So what's annoying to persons, right? That could be clicking your nails, sucking your teeth. For me personally, it would be listening to your phone without headphones. Listen to headphones, right? Don't listen to your stupid music in Starbucks or whatever. And quit using your speakerphone. Use your headphones. Anyway, and you might say, well, but headphones hurt my ears and blah, 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 blah. And those are all fine. And the reason that you have that is because the way that statute was written made the police officer the judge of what was annoying. So if the police officer likes your rap music or your country music or your liberal or conservative podcast, then maybe he'll let it slide, right? So the court said that statute was overbroad. It gave the government too much discretion in limiting free speech. So then they asked him, like, okay, well, what are you trying to do? And the city council in court is like, well, we want to limit sound, right? Not content, but sound. And I was like, okay, well, there's a way to do that, and that's the time, place, and manner. So annoying would be, it's not rap, country, polka, worship, thrash, death, goth, punk, whatever. It's decibels. I don't want to hear your music, say, 50 feet away or past 10 o'clock at night in a park, or that kind of thing. So anyway, it's overbroad. And those are the other thing there are called chilling effects. So the reason we don't do that is if a police officer, if police start to like, say, hey, you can't say that. Not you can't say that loudly, but you can't say that thing. Well, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well then what things can't I say? And then that's a chilling effect. The idea would be you should have the right to sort of let it rip. There are consequences sometimes to speech, but there are, we don't want the government out of fear to also limit speech because they have limited speech in this one area. Now, other cases here, other things. So political speech is just what it sounds like. Speech about politics, speech about issues, speech about politicians. It's perfectly okay to slag on a politician that you don't like, or to, polish up a politician that you do like. This goes back to the prior restraints, right? Sedition is talk against the government. So one of the dangers of the government, and has always been, when the church was in charge, say the Anglican Church and Church of England, then you can't say anything about the Archbishop of Canterbury. If the Pope is in charge or the Catholic Church is the official religion, then maybe you can't say anything about the Pope or say anything about God. And you shouldn't say bad things about God. But it's a free country, and the government shouldn't punish you for that, right? I mean, that's the thing. It doesn't mean that blasphemy or heresy or saying bad words are good. It just means that the government's job is not necessarily to limit those things. It's our right and our parents' right, I guess, when we're children, to regulate our speech, to self-regulate. And then, of course, again, we have jobs that would also, some of you may work for government agencies. Well, when I worked for the state of Texas, I couldn't go out and campaign for the governor, not as a state agent. Now, if I wanted to go on Saturday and put on a t-shirt and jeans and tennis shoes and go walk around, I would be fine doing that. But during work hours, well, I can't do that. The state, in that case, has a reasonable limit on my speech, right? They didn't want us to put signs in our yards. Why? Because they didn't want the Texas Department of Public Safety to get run across or run afoul of some legislator who's going to do our budget, that kind of thing. If you're police officers, you can't go out maybe and smoke weed or talk about being pro-weed or pro-gang or pro-whatever. You may be those things, but your agency will be able to limit your speech. So that's generally, again, there's a presumption against prior restraints, as I mentioned earlier too. Presumption means that, now, if you work for, say, the CIA, if any of you ever and you get a top secret security clearance, one of the things you do when you get a clearance is you sign a contract. If you give me this clearance, I promise if I ever write a book or give an interview or whatever about my job, I will run the manuscript by the federal government to redact names, places, etc. that are dangerous. So whenever you see a book written by a former spy, odds are he took that manuscript, ran it by the CIA, they gave it the thumbs up, and then they let it go. If he went ahead and published it anyway, there could be a lawsuit, those kinds of things that come up. Now, how do you regulate speech? How does a court look at this? So one thing, and here's a bunch of, I'm not sure what's going on with the Jehovah's Witnesses in the 20th century, but they were running, Jehovah's Witnesses, if you don't know, don't like celebrate government holidays. They don't do Christmas or Halloween or Thanksgiving, I believe, as well. I don't want to go too deep because I'm not totally familiar with all of their theology. But I know they also don't say the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't adhere loyalty to the government out of some scruple about not putting government over God or something along those lines. So the Barnett case, the court first said that children in elementary school cannot be coerced to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So in that case, kind of sprang out both political speech and also religious scruples. But no child can be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance, even though they still say the Pledge of Allegiance in elementary schools. Woolley versus Maynard is the live free or die case. I think in today's world where you have like 15 different options on your license plate, This case is probably nowhere today, but back in those days, the New Hampshire state motto is "Live Free or Die." And Maynards were also Jehovah's Witnesses. They did not want to. They thought "Live Free or Die" violated their religious principles, so therefore they didn't want to be made to speak or to say or show that slogan. The court upheld that. Southworth case, University of Wisconsin had student fees, and those student fees funded all sorts of clubs. So, and the court said that was okay because all students pay the fees, and if you have a student club, you get the fees. So in this case, it dealt with an abortion group, but as long as it was viewpoint neutral, so the Christian club gets money, the atheist club gets money, the Satanist club gets money, the pro-life club gets money, the pro-choice club gets money, all the clubs get money at the University of Wisconsin, so the court upheld that fee. They didn't want to be coerced. That's what coerced means. The Maynards thought they were being coerced by New Hampshire to put that slogan on their license plate, and the court agreed. The Southworth case, the students thought they were being coerced to support clubs they didn't support because of their student fees, and the court said, no, you're supporting student life in general, not any one in particular club in particular. The Becerra case is California. California can't force pregnancy centers to advertise for abortion services. Kudos, California. The Supreme Court struck that down. Masterpiece Cake Shop, which has to do with the cake baker in Colorado who didn't want to make cakes for gay marriages. The court didn't come down on the religious freedom issue. They looked at it as a free speech issue, saying that they can't be made to put an image on a cake if it violates their conscience. The Janus case, 2018, also same thing, that you can't force people to pay union dues, especially if the union takes political stances that are beyond the scope of the job. So, for example, sometimes if you're in a union, the union might take a pro-life or pro-choice mostly stance, and like say, well, I don't believe in abortion. I don't want my money to go to do that. And the court said you can do that. You can say, look, I'm going to pay enough dues to cover union work. Anything extra, not my money. Symbolic speech. There are cases back from the Vietnam War about burning draft cards. Probably the big case here, Texas versus Johnson on slide 29, is the flag burning case. In that case, a man went to the Republican National Convention in 1984 in Dallas, at the Dallas Convention Center. I don't know if you've ever been to the Dallas Convention Center, but it's a ginormous building. Think of like San Diego where Comic-Con is. It's all concrete. You're not going to set that sucker on fire. It's made of concrete, glass, and steel. Johnson bought a flag, right? Bought his own American flag, and then went to this concrete area and then burned the flag. Well, the Texas legislature had passed a specific flag burning statute. Now, if they had just stuck with arson is content neutral, right? In arson law, you can't burn anything. No structure, no grass, no fence, no article, or nothing, or anything, or nothing, or nothing. But in this specific case, it said you can't burn an American flag. Well, that's political speech, right? Hey, I don't like flag burning, but it's your right to burn a flag, especially your own flag, right? So if you go to the bank and you run their flag down the pole and you burn it, well, now you've stolen the flag and you've committed a crime. That's a mixture of both speech and theft. The theft will outlaw. They can stop you from doing that. But if you go to whatever flag shop, Flag Co., and you buy your own flag and you burn it, and it's not dangerous, you're not burning it in the forest, you're not burning it on grass, you're not burning it, in any place that's flammable, then the court said that would be upheld. So again, it has to be viewpoint neutral statute. So if they rely on arson is a viewpoint neutral statute. It just says you can't burn anything for any reason, a malicious burning. Now, speech then that's unprotected. So treason, of course, remember, is plotting against the federal government. So you have no right to speak. Now, you can speak against your own government. So if you don't like the war in Iran or the ICE policy towards immigration, or you don't like Joe Biden or Barack Obama or George Bush or whatever, we pick all sides, you're free to say those things. But what you're not free to do is call China and say, hey, the Chinese government rather, and say, hey, I don't like my president's policy on X, Y, or Z. Let's do business. That's called treason. You have no right to do that. That's pretty settled law. Chaplinsky case is the so-called fighting words case. So again, fighting words is one of those time, place, and manner restrictions. It's not just vulgar words and racial slurs and those kinds of things. If I know that you're a Giants fan and I'm a Dodgers fan, and I get up nose to nose to you in your face and I say the Giants suck and blah blah blah, and I'm spitting and I'm blah, blah, that's going to cause a fight. Are the words themselves are harmless, right? It has nothing to do with politics, religion, sexual orientation, none of that, right? But because I'm in your face and I'm yelling and I'm spitting and Dodgers and Giants have a rivalry. Pick another one. Pick the I'm a Cowboys fan. Cowboys and Eagles. Steelers and Browns. Those kinds of. That's where the cops would come in and say, look, back up, right? You go over there. Again, they're not limiting what I'm saying. They're limiting how I'm saying it. So fighting words is one of those content neutral time, place, and manner restrictions. Hate speech, probably not. Again, it's mostly a time, place, and manner restriction. If the Klan buys a permit, has a parade, and they hold signs that have the N-word and anti-Semitic statements and all that kind of stuff, they are free to do that, right? As long as they have a permit. Now, there'll be security and all of that. So hate speech is in general is outlawed. Now, if someone is uttering racial slurs while they're beating up someone, then you can use those to enhance that as a hate crime. So that would be like aggravated battery in California, and then maybe you throw on 5 years because it's racially motivated or something along those lines. Other unprotected speech, slide 31 here, obscenity. Obscenity is mostly nowadays also, if you just think about all the filth you can download into your phone and on your laptop and into your TV now through satellite and through Wi-Fi and all that, mostly it dealt with what's called broadcast, which is over the airwaves. So if you have an antenna, you can get, say the local channels here in SoCal, those are channel 2, channel 4, channels 5, channel 7, 9, 11, etc. You don't need cable, you don't need fiber optics, you don't need internet. They just come straight over the air. Anyone can access those. Those airwaves are owned by the government. So because they're owned by the government, they can regulate content to some degree. So that's the time, place, and manner thing. Obscenity, think mostly probably pornography for the most part, but it could be extreme violence, extreme grossness, something that would sort of shock the public conscience and all of that. But if you just think about what you see on TV today in terms of, F-bombs and nudity and violence and extreme violence, obscenity is mostly just keep it in your own home, in your own phone, and not let it out so kids can see it, the general public can see it in that. But probably the only outlawed, like from the get-go outlawed obscenity is child pornography for obvious reasons, and those kinds of extreme content. So again, remember, legal and moral are different, so we may have different scruples about what people should watch or can watch or any of that sort of stuff, but legally speaking, can the government or will the government get involved? And the answer is generally no, unless it's out in the open to the public. Public order, again, that's kind of related to fighting words. Again, you can't stop traffic on the 91 freeway to give a speech. There was a ban a few years ago that blocked traffic on the 110 freeway in LA. Oh my Lord. People were so mad. It was like 5 o'clock. Not a good speech stunt. Government sponsorship. If you take money from the government, then to say be a defense attorney, like a public defender, then you have to limit your speech to the defense of your client, right? Government doesn't allow you to go out and say you're a cop, a federal agent, let's say DEA, and then slag on the federal policy of the war on drugs. You can't do that. You're our employee. They can limit that speech to some degree. If you're a lawyer, you can say whatever you want in defense of your client if you're paid by the government. That's one of that's kind of part of the aspects of being a lawyer. And then free press. Again, prior restraints. So the difference between, and I mentioned a little bit already, is one, you have broadcasts, so like regular, what's called terrestrial radio. So if you think, again, here in LA, I don't know where, I know some of y'all, somebody's from Ohio and one in California or Colorado and some other places around here, or across this beautiful nation. Like KLAC 570 AM, home of the Dodgers, right? That you turn that on your radio in the car and anyone can get it. And then there's like Sirius XM radio, satellite radio. Obviously, if you listen to like Apple Podcasts or I like Podcast Addict is my favorite app. Whether you're watching TV on a streamers go straight to you, to your modem, your router. So there's no licensing there. If the government licenses it, like public airways, that's why if you listen to, say, a rap song on, 106.7 or whatever, then you'll hear the bad words kind of blipped out. And it sounds like they're blips slightly, but they are blipped. Whereas if you go to Spotify, it'll say E explicit, and then the words are just there, right? That's because the government owns the airwaves and then licenses the TV station or the radio station, therefore they can limit some of that stuff. That's why when you watch stuff on AMC, the streamer or Peacock Plus is a good example. Paramount Plus, which is CBS, Peacock Plus is NBC. If you watch Channel 2, CBS LA, you won't see the same content there that you will on the CBS streamer. There they might have F-bombs, naked people, all that kind of stuff. On the open broadcast, those will be limited by the FCC. So Near versus Minnesota there on slide 34. No prior restraints as the general rule. There are some exceptions. Wartime safety, so you think about troop movements and all of that. Obscenity, we've talked about that. Incitement to overthrow government or violence in general. And then some invasion of privacy rights, which refers back to defamation or slander. So, for example, in the criminal justice setting, we don't name sex crime victims. We don't name child victims oftentimes, right? Jane Doe, John Doe. We don't invade medical privacy. So think about HIPAA laws. Students, you have FERPA, which is the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act. So I will not tell your parents or your spouse or your children or your siblings your grades. Those are yours. That's your privacy right? That's a limit on my speech. Others here, I mentioned the CIA, broadcast media. The case there is called Red Lion from 1969. The Miami Herald case, it was differentiated newspapers, print media. The difference there is if you're a newspaper or a magazine, you own your own printing press, you own your own ink, your own paper. In today's world, we would say you own the server, you own the network, you own the equipment, and all of that, right? So that limited access to airwaves, but not to paper. And then the last section here on libel and invasion of privacy, I would just say that the truth is a defense as a general rule. As a general rule, the more famous you are, the less protection you get. So just think about all the awful things people say about Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, LeBron James, Tom Brady. I just saw that I didn't watch it, but there's a roast of Kevin Hart. You can say awful things about people during those celebrity roasts. Even if they were to get mad, there's really nothing they can do about it. I mentioned the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. The reason Johnny Depp was able to actually defend himself in that case, or sue rather, is because he lost an actual job, right? He lost like $15 million on the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And so he actually had damages. If it had just been Joe Blow saying, hey, Johnny Depp is a drunk and he sounds weird and he sounds like he's high all the time, and I said that, he's not going to lose a job for that. He would just have to put up with it, right? But because he actually lost a job tied to the words that Amber Heard said, that's where the lawsuit came from. So she has the right to say it, but the consequences are she can be sued for damages in that case. That's what tort action means. Other one here, Hustler versus Jerry Falwell. The court said parody and humor, Parody, parody, satire. So if you think about Saturday Night Live, Dave Chappelle, Norm Macdonald, stand-up comedians in general, all those you can pretty much say anything in humor, and the government will cover it as a parody or a satire. And then the right not to speak, kind of related to Miranda, right? You have the right to remain silent. And I'm going to maintain my right to remain silent right now. I will talk to y'all next week about religious liberty.